Dr. Cele, you can start.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues, all of you. And I am taking this opportunity. I just want to welcome each and everyone on our today's webinar. Like we all know, yesterday it was a mental health day. So we know the importance of mental health, how much important it is, especially in these days, regardless of the fact that mental health in the previous era, it hasn't been taken seriously, and it was really not considered so much by quite a number of people, even our communities and societies where we are coming from. But we are grateful today that at least we are now at a point where quite a number of countries now, they do recognize the importance of mental health, because really, as we always say, no health without mental health. So on our today's webinar, I just want to welcome each and every one of you. And then today, our speaker of today, we've got the lady, a very beautiful lady of ours, by the name of actually, before I tell you the name, because I know that you are all now waiting for the name, no, just hold your horses. She is a lecturer, a senior clinical psychologist in the Department of Behavioral Medicine at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. She is based at Town Hill Hospital, where she is involved in providing inpatient and outpatient services. She also undertakes training of intern clinical psychologists and other members of the multidisciplinary team. And that one, with a very beautiful, short, brief bio, but very much powerful. So on her background, when you're reading, you can just actually now understand that who is this person, and it's none other than our very Dr. Emma Johnson. Dr. Emma Johnson, a warm welcome on this webinar today. And on this month, like I said earlier on my opening remarks, that yesterday it was a mental health. We are looking forward to you to tell us more, because our topic that we want to cover today, we are saying that dealing with depression in the midst of COVID-19. So how can you really advise people? Because COVID-19 as a pandemic that has been faced by the country, and actually globally, it was faced by almost each and everyone. And we have seen COVID taking a number of lives. Other houses and other families were left unattended, were left without anyone to provide as breadwinners, were actually died because of COVID-19. Now, how can we deal positively with COVID-19? Thank you. Over to you, Dr. E. Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cele, and lovely to meet you. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining this webinar today.
Thank you.
I am one of 3 colleagues who are going to be presenting in the consecutive weeks from the Department of Behavioral Medicine. And as mentioned, I also work at Town Hill Hospital. And today we're really looking at what I think is quite a crucial subject. And I think we're living in quite crucial times, and particularly in the context of work where so many of us are dealing with so many different challenges, both at work and at a personal level. And particularly in KZN, when so much has happened in the last couple of months. So I'm just going to start off, and then hopefully there will be some time. We have started a little bit late, but I'm hoping there will be some time for any questions if anybody would like to ask later. I always struggle to get my full screen up. So if you just give me a moment. Sorry. Okay, sorry, I'm just going to share it as is so we don't waste any more time. Here we go. All right, so I think all of us have had days when we've been feeling low, particularly in the last couple of months. And we might have had just general feelings of tiredness or sadness, frustration, feelings of hopelessness, low self-esteem, even anger. And those are all the symptoms and signs of having a low mood. But a low mood usually improves after a few days or weeks. If it doesn't go away, it can be a sign of depression. I'm going to just show you a very short video about depression, because I think it gives a lovely, well, not a lovely, but an accurate introduction to the subject. It is a video that's available. I think the World Health Organization initially made it available, and then it is available on the SADC website, which I will refer to a number of times in this presentation.
Over the past 10 years, I've been living 2 different lives. The life that my family, my friends, my colleagues, my teammates see. But then there's the life that I see, that I live, and that I feel. You ask my family or friends what they thought about me, they'd probably tell you I'm a happy-go-lucky, positive, hardworking, and confident guy. Well, all that's a bit of a lie. See, I'm living a completely different life inside. I'm living a life of someone who suffers immensely with depression. And this is so hard for me to talk about, but it's not just me. It's impossible for the millions of other people to talk about it. And that's the problem. That's actually the problem with depression. But what we fear the most isn't the dark place that we're in, or the dark times that we're going to go through, or what we're capable of doing. What we actually fear the most is that our friends won't understand, that we'll lose them, that our family won't know what we're going through, or won't get it, that our colleagues will look at us differently, or that we may even lose our jobs. But that's just a stigma we believe exists inside ourselves. And it honestly isn't the case. It's not how society will see it. Last year in Ireland alone, over 550 people died as a cause of depression. That's more than car accidents in Ireland. But yet, we are so aware of drive safe campaigns, of road safety awareness, that our government and governing bodies push onto us. And that's great. But we all need to start talking about depression. And we need to open up. I pushed myself into a dark place, into a dark corner. A corner that only had one way out. I thought about that way every single day for 10 years. And you shouldn't think like that. But I was alone in my own mind, even though I could never be alone. I have so many great friends, family, colleagues, teammates, that I just need to open up. And I didn't. And I can't try and help others if I can't even help myself. And over the last 10 years, this feeling of depression, this feeling of darkness and sadness became so normal. You become so used to it. You become numb to this feeling. And you think it's acceptable to live your life like this. And it's not. What I want to achieve from this is to try and encourage one other person, 5 other people to open up and talk about it. You see, the stigma we believe exists inside others as sufferers of depression is that we'll be judged, that we'll be slagged behind our back, that we'll be painted with the same brush. We'll lose our job, we'll lose our friends, but we won't. That won't happen. People are so much more accepting to it than you think. Depression isn't like breaking an arm, where you go to the hospital and you get it fixed, or like chickenpox, where you face once and you'll never face again. It's a lot deeper than that. But in society, if you break your arm, we feel that people want to help you. They'll open up the door. They'll help you carry your bags. They'll ask you how it happened. They'll run over to sign your cast. And we feel as sufferers that if you opened up about your mental health issues, that people will want to run away. Depression is so well documented, but yet it's just not discussed. We feel that if we just push it into a corner, it will go away, and that's not going to help you or me or the millions of other people that suffer through this in silence. The first step to solving a problem is admitting there is one. So how can we expect to find an answer when we're still afraid of the question? But as the young comedian Kevin Breel said, this needs to start with me, with you, with the millions of other people that suffer through depression. In some ways, I've hated the last 10 years of my life, going through this dark and awful place alone. But in other ways, I'm grateful that I've got through it. I'm grateful that I've been dragged through this darkness because it's helped me see the light. It's helped me be stronger than I ever imagined I could be. But we need to speak up if we're suffering in silence. It's the only way we're going to beat this stigma. It's the only way we're going to help ourselves and help each other. It's the only way we're going to learn to love ourselves and get out of this dark place that we're all in. Please speak up and talk to your friends or family. Thanks.
Someone tell me when my heart will stop breaking.
Okay, we'll go back. Okay, so I think that gives just an introduction to.
I had a black
Sorry.
dog. His name was Depression. Whenever the black dog made an appearance, I felt empty and life just seemed to slow down. He would surprise me with a visit for no reason or occasion.
Sorry, everybody, just technological challenges. Okay, so I think that initial video was just really around the very hard experience of depression and that many people go through. Globally, depression is one of the most common mental illnesses. It's the leading cause of disability worldwide and contributes significantly to the overall burden of disease. And more women are affected by depression than men. So what is depression? I think that video has introduced it. It's different from the usual experience of fluctuating moods and brief emotional responses to the challenges life presents every day. If it is recurrent with moderate to severe intensity, depression can become a serious health condition, causing suffering as well as poor functioning at work, school, and in one's family. And most concerning is that it can lead to suicide. So in addition to the symptoms I've already mentioned in terms of low mood, depression might include a low mood, or usually includes a low mood lasting 2 weeks or more, not getting sufficient enjoyment out of life, feeling hopeless, lacking energy or feeling tired, not being able to concentrate on things every day, like watching television or reading the paper, losing one's appetite or comfort eating, being unable to sleep or sleeping more than usual, and having thoughts about harming or suicidal thoughts. An aspect of depression that is often quite crucial is the neurotransmitters that it involves in the brain, and particularly serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. And there you can see a diagram of the brain and how each of those neurotransmitters impact, and particularly around the symptomatology that one might have if one has depression. So, for example, serotonin might affect an appetite and weight changes, guilt and feelings of worthlessness, suicidal ideation, and you can see in the brain the various aspects, the various places that serotonin can be found. And then you can see in the middle the convergence in terms of depressed mood specifically, and the sleep disturbance and psychomotor disturbances. I'm not a medical doctor, so I'll leave a more in-depth discussion to the medical profession around the particular neurotransmitters. But that just gives you a brief overview of their involvement and how crucial they are when it comes to talking about depression. Then just looking at the prevalence of depression. So According to the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation, it's estimated that approximately 280 million people in the world have depression, with an estimated 3.8% of the population affected, including 5% amongst adults and 5 to 7% among adults older than 60 years. More than 700,000 people die as a result of suicide every day, and it is the fourth leading cause of death in 15 to 29-year-olds. Results from the South African Stress and Anxiety Study in 2009 indicated a 9.7% lifetime prevalence for major depression and 4.9% for the 12 months prior to when the interviews in the study were conducted. The prevalence of depression was significantly higher among females than for males, and the prevalence was also higher for those with a lower level of education. Findings from a research study which investigated the impact of depression on the workforce in South Africa indicated that at least 1 in 4 employees has a diagnosis of depression. So the country's economic engine age group of 25 to 45-year-olds is most affected, which is very concerning, particularly given the times that we're living in and the stresses that people are facing. During their last depressive episode, employees took 18 days off work due to the condition. So those were just very general statistics and issues surrounding depression. But we're looking specifically today at COVID-19 and depression, and how do we, as we emerge from some of the pandemic, it's not gone completely, how do we reintegrate back into our work context, particularly, and how do we cope with possibly low mood and more concerningly, if we have become depressed, particularly during this time. So there was a meta-analysis done in 2021 of longitudinal cohort studies, which found that there was an acute increase in mental health symptoms at the onset of the pandemic. And then the symptoms subsequently declined significantly thereafter, and there was no difference from the symptom profiles pre-pandemic a few months following the outbreak. An online survey was conducted in the Western Cape from the 20th to the 31st of May 2020. And in a sample of about 860 participants from many high educated socioeconomically advantaged segments of the population, 46% and 47.2% of participants met the diagnostic threshold for anxiety and depressive disorder, respectively. Significant daily life repercussions were also associated with these scores. Distress related to being infected and distress due to containment measures were associated significantly with more depressive and anxiety symptoms, and poorer mental health was associated with having a pre-existing mental health condition. However, being an active health worker was not. And one can postulate that may just be because of the knowledge base that health workers may have, and knowledge is one aspect in terms of how we cope with a lot of these stresses. Being able to have knowledge is definitely a privilege and a tool, and it can be very useful to draw on under the stresses that one might be facing. So younger age, being female and living in a non-rural area were associated with poorer mental health. And the study concluded that the pandemic and related measures of containment had considerable mental health impact. However, there was low attendance of mental health services. So that's just to give you some of the international perspective and some of the South African perspective on COVID and depression particularly. The level, I think something else we need to think about, and particularly in our context, is also the level of perceived stress. And this might be high in low and middle income countries as compared to countries with higher income due to aspects such as unemployment, food insecurity, poverty, overcrowding, and financial distress. And then natural disasters such as hurricanes, floods, cyclones, or tsunamis are also frequent in low and middle income countries, resulting in higher levels of perceived stress. And we know that KZN has been particularly impacted by that in the last year or so. Then drastic and rapid changes due to urbanization and globalization, which occur across many low and middle income countries, might also contribute to increased levels of perceived stress among people in these contexts. And factors such as the limited availability of mental health care in low and middle income countries as compared to high income countries may also be impacting the association between depression and perceived stress. So there are many different factors that are impacting on our stress levels and which ultimately has an impact on our bodies, minds, and our emotional functioning. But now I'm going to just look more specifically at some very concrete things that we can do to assist with low mood. And these everybody can access, they're not highfalutin, but I think it's important that we all reminded as we go into sometimes very stressful situations. So these are some things that one can do to manage one's mood. The first thing is to look after yourself, and that might sound like a simple thing to do, but when there are many different things happening and many hard circumstances, it can be very hard to even implement some of these things. So some simple lifestyle factors like choosing a well-balanced diet, getting enough sleep, doing some exercise, keeping a routine, and limiting one's alcohol intake. Keeping a routine is very important. It's one of the things that's advised, particularly if there's been a crisis, that as far as possible you get back to some kind of routine as quickly as possible, and that can really assist. Then very, very important in whatever circumstance one finds oneself in is that one is connecting with others. So reaching out to family and friends, speaking with them telephonically, if one's privileged enough to be able to have technology, using video calls, Zoom, WhatsApp, etc. If there are circumstances where you're not able to see people face to face, like we experienced in COVID. And if talking feels too much, just trying to stay in touch through messages instead. Then taking part in meaningful activities. So when people feel low, they sometimes don't feel like doing what they would usually. And particularly through the pandemic, there are times when we haven't been able to do the normal activities, the ones that we're used to doing. And if one's still recovering from COVID, those are some of the things one also needs to think about. Thinking about small achievable activities one can complete daily will give one a sense of accomplishment and enjoyment. So taking one's mind off for a moment some of the big, huge issues and just looking at bringing it right down to one's everyday. What are some of the achievable things one can actually do in the context? Then also being able to reflect on writing a recovery diary. So writing down how one's recovering and the achievements one made along the way, whether small or big, can also be helpful to look back at the positive progress one has made and to be able to write down any difficult feelings and thoughts one has been experiencing can also be helpful in order to step back. Then being kind to yourself, let oneself recover and rest. Rest is a big factor and some of us are very bad at it, but it really does help with recovery, and knowing that recovery takes time. And it can feel difficult if there are any ongoing symptoms and if these are hidden. One might find that one's being hard on oneself and sees oneself as lazy. However, if one broke one's leg, well, one wouldn't try to run a race immediately. It can be helpful to think about what one would say to a close family or friend if they were in one's position. And then when does one actually go further than just doing some things you can do yourself? So when does one seek help and who does one go and talk to? KZN is very fortunate in that there are many resources, both in the public service and privately, that people can access. There's also as I mentioned a little bit earlier, there's very active body in the work that SADC is doing. They've got a wonderful website, which some of you might be familiar with, where there are a lot of resources in dealing with depression and other mental health issues. And I know they're very, very active in this province. But if one's feeling still down after a couple of weeks, one place one can go to is to talk to one's GP or to talk to the nurse or the doctor at the clinic. It's especially important to seek help if one has symptoms of depression that aren't getting any better. And remembering that if one's work, relationships with family and friends or interests are affected by one's mood. And then just very briefly, the treatment for depression, there is effective treatment for severe, moderate and mild depression. If one's diagnosed with depression, and I gave some very general symptoms, usually a formal diagnosis would be involved using the DSM-5 and looking at some of the specific criteria. I haven't gone into those today, but your treating professional, if you do see somebody, would be referring to those criteria. As I just backtracking a little bit, we have spoken a bit around self-help. There's some very helpful resources. I've put one there from the NHS working in Scotland, where they've got a depression self-help guide. But if your symptoms aren't improving and you want to look at further treatment, I'm going to obviously punt the talking therapy, psychotherapy. It can be quite a daunting process because it involves being vulnerable and trusting somebody else with some of your innermost thoughts and feelings. And I think that's why it sometimes gets a bad rap, because it is a process of vulnerability. But if you are speaking to a good therapist, they're going to be respecting that, and they're going to be respecting your boundaries and things like confidentiality. They're not going to share your story with the whole world unless you choose to share it. And so those there are a lot of resources. Accessing something like the SADC website, you'll also be able to pick out a number of those resources, and I'm going to share some more a little bit later. And then we work very closely, as I have also mentioned, with the doctors, particularly in terms of looking at antidepressants and your anti-anxiety medication. We like to work in a team because there are different issues at stake. As I mentioned, the neurotransmitters, sometimes the work that you're doing and talking is just not shifting because there is something biochemical happening, and that needs to be addressed as well, and vice versa. You might get the biochemics right for a while, and then because the underlying issues aren't being addressed, it's really important that we talk about those. Okay, I'm hoping we have enough time to just look perhaps at this video, which is another one that's also available on SADC and I think the World Health site as well.
I had a black dog. His name was Depression. Whenever the black dog made an appearance, I felt empty and life just seemed to slow down. He could surprise me with a visit for no reason or occasion. The black dog made me look and feel older than my years. When the rest of the world seemed to be enjoying life, I could only see it through the black dog. Activities that usually brought me pleasure suddenly ceased to. He liked to ruin my appetite. He chewed up my memory and my ability to concentrate. Doing anything or going anywhere with the black dog required superhuman strength. At social occasions, he'd sniff out what confidence I had and chase it away. My biggest fear was being found out. I worried that people would judge me. Because of the shame and stigma of the black dog, I was constantly worried that I'd be found out. So I invested vast amounts of energy into covering him up. Keeping up an emotional lie is exhausting. Black dog could make me think and say negative things. He could make me irritable and difficult to be around. He would take my love and bury my intimacy. He loved nothing more than to wake me up with highly repetitive and negative thinking. He also liked to remind me how exhausted I was going to be the next day. Having a black dog in your life isn't so much about feeling a bit down, sad or blue. At its worst, it's about being devoid of feeling altogether. As I got older, the black dog got bigger and he started hanging around all the time. I chased him off with whatever I thought might send him running. But more often than not, he'd come out on top. Going down became easier than getting up again. So I became rather good at self-medication, which never really helped. Eventually, I felt totally isolated from everything and everyone. The black dog had finally succeeded in hijacking my life. When you lose all joy in life, you can begin to question what the point of it is. Thankfully, this was the time that I sought professional help. This was my first step towards recovery and a major turning point in my life. I learned that it doesn't matter who you are, the black dog affects millions and millions of people. It is an equal opportunity mongrel. I also learned that there was no silver bullet or magic pill. Medication can help some, and others might need a different approach altogether. I also learned that being emotionally genuine and authentic to those who are close to you can be an absolute game changer. Most importantly, I learned not to be afraid of the black dog, and I taught him a few new tricks of my own. The more tired and stressed you are, the louder he barks. So it's important to learn how to quiet your mind. It's been clinically proven that regular exercise can be as effective for treating mild to moderate depression as antidepressants. So go for a walk or a run and leave the muck behind. Keep a mood journal. Getting your thoughts on paper can be cathartic and often insightful. Also keep track of the things that you have to be grateful for. The most important thing to remember is that no matter how bad it gets, if you take the right steps, talk to the right people, black dog days can and will pass. I wouldn't say that I'm grateful for the black dog, but he's been an incredible teacher. He forced me to reevaluate and simplify my life. I learned that rather than running away from my problems, it's better to embrace them. The black dog may always be part of my life, but he'll never be the beast that he was. We have an understanding. I've learned through knowledge, patience, discipline and humour, the worst black dog can be made to heal. If you're in difficulty, never be afraid to ask for help. There is absolutely no shame in doing so. The only shame is missing out on life.
Okay, that video I think just covers a lot of what I've been talking about as well. Just a comment is they refer to a black dog. I think it could be any color dog. It doesn't necessarily mean black dog. So, but in the context of the just feeling that one might experience, it can be very uncomfortable feeling. So just also to reiterate, positive effect, holding positive emotions alongside negative emotions, cognitive reappraisal, see this time as an opportunity to re-examine societal institutions, reframe, for example, quarantine as an opportunity to improving on a hobby or interest, reconnect with family members and others. Social support, maintain social connection through volunteering to help those who are isolated and older and using virtual methods. And then spirituality is something I haven't spoken about, but it's really important. So seeking meaning, direction, and purpose from spiritual connections, such as religious practice and or non-religious spiritual forms, such as music. Okay, and then I did mention these are all available on the Department of Behavioral Medicine site. There are resources there, some of the psychological services in KZN, and then a number of other videos and another of other resources for coping, and particularly with COVID-19. And very importantly, one needs to be looking at prevention. Preventive programs for mental health may target specific coping skills such as cognitive restructuring and support seeking, hardiness training, mindfulness, or psychoeducation about stress control. All right, and Those are just some of the references. So I know we've come to our time quite quickly, but I just wanted to check if there are any questions anybody would like to raise or ask.
Thank you so much, Dr. Johnston. That was a wow presentation, especially in these times. Without wasting time, I just want to check from our participants. Does anyone have any questions that is directed to Dr. Emma Johnston? You can indicate by raising hand. On my side, I don't see any hands. I don't know, Nombuso, can you see any hands on your side?
No, there is no hand.
Okay.
Oh, okay, no, thank you so much. I think colleagues, you have heard the importance of dealing with depression, especially post-COVID-19. And also, Dr. E has spoken quite a number of things. She has covered quite a number of things where she was even talking about what to do and where to go should you become affected. And then also, which support groups can you just associate yourself with, or where you can be referred to. And the other thing, we need to be very much cautioned of trying by all means to prevent depression, because it is preventable as long as it hasn't actually taken place. So Dr. E, thank you so much. I can see the time it's running against us, but before we can go, I think, guys, from now on, we will all know where to go and what to do when we are being affected. When she was talking about prevalence of depression, where she was saying that females are more affected than males, it is true, because in these days, that's what we see, that more females are more affected by depression compared to males. And I think it is because of the nature of the things that we are doing. And also, when she was talking of the symptoms addressing those things, most of the time we ignore our moods, you know. Most of the time we ignore how we behave, we ignore, we can't even recognize that today my mood is not okay, my mood is too low. And also that can actually affect you as much as you can. Also, if you feel like that lacking of energy, feeling tired, you need to check what is it all about. And there is a point that Dr. Emma alluded on, where she was saying that most of the time, almost quite a number of people in these days, we are unable to sleep enough, you know, because of our very hectic schedules that we are all having. But at the end of the day, we need to find time to rest, because should you not find time to rest, then you will end up being vulnerable to this depression, and because the body will simply just break down. So thank you so much, Dr. E. And I don't know if you've got any other things to share with us, and thank you for the videos. I think you are going to share your slides with Nombuso so that we can have them on our poll. Otherwise, the topic of today, it was very, very much important. And then going back to Nombuso Dlamini as the organizer of this thing. Thank you so much, Nombuso, especially to touch these topics, because these topics are very, very much important, but people, they are not aware how much important are these topics. So guys, especially as health professionals, let us also not ignore our own mindset, or else our own psychological parts and mental aspects. So by so saying, thank you so much, and all the participants, thank you so much for attending. And then without wasting your time, on my side, bye-bye.